I never would have imagined my life to be thus. Rita is my name. Here is my story. Good people who taught me the worth of diligence. I was born into farmers. Our day began before dawn, caring for the animals and crops from the day I could walk. Back then, life was not complicated. I would go to school, get home, and assist on the farm. Weekends were for family time and housekeeping catching up. I neither wanted nor knew any other. But everything changed after I passed through high school. Bless their hearts, my parents yearned for more for me than a farm would provide. One evening as we gathered around the dinner table, Dad said, "Rita, we have been talking. Your mom and I suggest you should visit college." And my universe grew out from that as well. I packed and headed to the metropolis, a place so unlike all I had known that it could as well have been another planet. One had an experience at college. Though the courses were intriguing enough, it was the individuals that truly awakened me. Children from many backgrounds with aspirations and dreams I would never have even given thought. Then Jack came along. In my second year, I ran across him. He was confident, friendly, and quite unlike the country guys back home. Jack, then, knew exactly what he wanted from life. Relaxing on the grass outside the library, he would add, "Life's too short to waste it working yourself to the bone. We should enjoy ourselves while we are young." I felt something. This was someone who considered life as an adventure rather than merely a never-ending set of responsibilities. We were talking about marriage before I realized we were dating. When I told my folks, they were wary. They wanted to see Jack to get to know the man who had snatched their daughter's heart. "He seems pleasant enough," Dad remarked following Jack's first farm visit. "But there's something I don't know. Just keep cautious, Rita." I discounted his worries. About modern love, what did my conventional father know? Jack was ideal, and we were going to lead beautiful lives together. Bless them, my parents paid for our wedding and even got us a city apartment. Mom added, her eyes foggy, "We want you to start well." "Thanks, Mother." "Dad," I murmured, giving them a firm hug, "I promise I'll make you proud." I felt my life was set when Jack and I stood at the altar completing vows and rings. I had a great job in the city, a loving husband, and a clear future. Well, I felt our first few years of marriage were decent. Jack and I both worked in the city. We developed a schedule. Looking back, though, I can see the fissures starting even then. "Rita, do we have to visit your folks' farm this weekend?" Jack would groan every time I proposed a visit. "Your dad always wants me to help with something. It smells like manure." I sighed and tried to talk sense-based with him. "Jack, my family is here and they have done so much for us." "Fine," he said, grumbling, "but I'm not shoveling any cow crap." I dismissed it as city boy queasy behavior. After all, I had grown up smelling those things and doing those jobs. Now, though, I wonder whether I ought to have considered it as a warning sign. 2 years into our marriage, I fell pregnant. I was flying, and my parents were overjoyed. "A grandchild?" Mom shrieked on the other end. "Oh, Rita, we really are glad for you." Jack responded with less passion. "Already a child? I suppose that's all right," he said. I wrote it down as nervousness. He would definitely warm up to the concept of fatherhood. Bless their hearts, my parents kept on helping us. They paid for holidays and purchased a car for us. I was appreciative, but Jack appeared to consider everything to be given. "Of course," he would add, "they are helping us. That is what parents do." I developed love all over once again when our son Tommy was born. Jack, well, he tried. I will assign that to him. But he did not naturally embrace fatherhood. "Could you not keep that child quiet?" He would grumble when Tommy shed tears at night. "Some of us have to report early." I would bite my tongue and tell myself that both of us were getting used to fatherhood. Then life continued. When we could, we went to the farm. Jack's resistance mounted on every trip. "Your dad asked me to help fix the tractor again." he said, grumbling. For Christ's sake, I am not a technician. I would see my dad and Jack working together. Dad, calm and consistent. Jack frowned and struggled with the instruments. Tragic events then occurred. My parents died a year apart. I was broken. They're gone, Jack, I said against his shoulder. I find it unbelievable they are gone. He gave me a clumsy back pat. It won't be bad. At least they left the farm for us. His comments stunned me. All Jack could consider was what our family had left behind, the property. Jack dropped a bombshell right in middle of my grief. We ought to sell the farm, he remarked one evening over supper. We could live as kings and purchase a large house in the city. I wanted to argue in order to defend the legacy of my family, but I was worn out from loss and the responsibilities of parenthood. Furthermore, wasn't a wife expected to back up her husband's choices? Okay, I remarked softly, if you believe it is best. And so it was, with a few signatures on certain documents, the history of my family sold to the highest bidder. Jack resembled a small child in a candy store as the money entered our joint account. We are set for life, Rita, he crowed. Stop laboring away at your job. We are free to act any way we choose. I nodded and grinned, trying not to feel hollow in my chest. Jack wanted this. I was his wife. I had to stand behind him, right? Living after selling the property was different. I'll grant Jack. The money from the sale cushioned us wonderfully. We were spared having to work as hard going forward. We both cut back to part-time hours, and for a period it seemed as though we were living the dream. But I began observing things as the years passed. Jack, who had never been a diligent student initially, seemed to lose all drive. Always with some justification, he would have quit jobs at the drop of a dime. That boss was a jerk, he would comment, or they expected too much. You knew I am not a slave. Try to talk to him rationally. Jack, we cannot sustain ourselves upon the farm income indefinitely. We ought to consider our future. He would have waved me off. Rita, relax. Our life is what it is. Why would we want to work until death? Our baby Tommy was developing rapidly in meantime. After high school and then college, he was working and living on his own before I realized it. Though I missed having him around, I was proud of him. I was turning through the papers one day when I came upon a name. It was a piece on a profitable concrete manufacturing facility run by Jack's uncle, Robert. Jack, I urged, did you see this article about your Uncle Robert? Jack's countenance clouded. I want not to hear about that old tyrant, he said sharply. I recognized the narrative, that of Jack at least. His uncle was looking after him when his parents passed away while he was a young man. How Robert had been trying to push Jack into the family company and had been demanding and dictatorial. Years ago, Jack had informed me. He never listened to what I wanted. I left and began my own life since it was always about what he thought was best. Looking at Jack now, sitting in his robe at 2 in the afternoon, I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the tale. Maybe it's time for peace, I said softly. Jack, it has been years. Individuals grow and change. Jack answered with tremendous force. Use that control freak to bring peace. None at all, Rita. Set it down. I let it go, but the episode unsettled me. There was great animosity and rage there. It made me wonder what else Jack was lugging about and what other side of himself he was hiding. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I heard Jack on the phone. His voice was cut off and contemptuous. He answered harshly, I am not interested in his life. It does not concern me, and hung up. My inquisitiveness won me over. Honey, who is that? Jack wore a mask of apathetic facial expression. Hotel. Sick is my uncle. If he kicks the bucket, at least I will at last have something out of him. Shock drove me to fix my gaze on him. Jack, that's an awful thing to say. He raised you. Yeah, and made my life hell, he said sharply. I won't be seeing him nowhere. Finish of the tale. Something inside me caught me as Jack relaxed back into his armchair with remote in hand. I married another man, not this one. The person I knew was not this one. I walked to our bedroom and called Tommy without a word to Jack. When he picked up, "Hey, sweetie," I said, "how would you find meeting your great-uncle?" Tommy accepted quickly, even though he was astonished. We were walking into the hospital an hour later, my heart thumping. Jack's uncle, Robert, lay in a bed surrounded by monitors in the ICU, a tangle of beeping devices and quiet whispers. He appeared tiny and weak, unlike the despot Jack had portrayed. His eyes teemed with tears when we introduced ourselves. "Rita, Tommy," he replied, sounding feeble yet friendly. "Oh, I have wanted to see you for so long." Robert shared with us his side of the tale during the following hour, how he had raised Jack as his own after his parents passed away. Robert remarked, his voice shaking, "I love that boy. I wanted him to have everything, to carry on the family business, to have a good life." Jack, it appeared, had different ideas. He claimed he did not want the responsibility. Robert said he didn't want to work hard like I did, stay up evenings worrying about the business. As Robert's comments created an image I too well knew, I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach. Jack insisted I sell the business. Robert shook his head, wanted me to arrange him with an apartment, a car, a monthly allowance, said I owed him a careless life. I turned to Tommy and saw my own disbelief reflected in his face. I told him that's not how life happens. Robert said, that money has to be acquired. He simply became irate when I urged him to stay and pick up the business, said he would meet a wealthy woman and never have to spend a day in his life working. Sitting in Uncle Robert's hospital room, memories from the preceding decade began to pour back like bits of a puzzle at last coming together. I saw our existence together under a fresh, demanding light. Jack has never worked steadily for very long. He usually opted for part-time employment, missed many days, and called in ill. I had ascribed it to stress, to his free spirit, but now I understood the truth. "Life is for pleasure, Rita," he said constantly. "Why kill yourselves working?" As insight dawned, I started to feel queasy. Jack hadn't wed me for a lifetime. Married for my family's money, he thought I could offer a comfortable life. For him, the affluent wife he promised his uncle would find, I was only a tool toward a goal. As this fact sank in my eyes, tears welled up there. Our marriage, our family, all of our life, was based on a falsehood. The voice of Uncle Robert roused me from my daydream. Weak in voice, he continued, "I'm so sorry. I will not be able to leave any to Tommy or you. Thou." I said, "It's okay," grasping his hand. "We have nothing at all needed." "I had plans," Robert said, getting increasingly restless. "A fresh effort. Though I was running out of time, it would have altered everything." Robert's face twisted in agony suddenly, and the surrounding machinery began to blink fiercely. "You have to leave," a nurse hurried in, saying, "Now." 2 days later, the call arrived. Uncle Robert had vanished. Jack's response when I informed him made my blood freeze. "Finally," he said, a smile lighting his face. "Long enough took the old bastard." Disgusted, I fixed a gaze upon him. "Jack, your uncle was like this. He brought you forward." He waved cynically. "Yes, indeed. The funeral is scheduled at what then? Should we make such a trip?" Jack missed it ultimately as well. Tommy and I planned the funeral ourselves, a modest, respectful event meant to make Uncle Robert proud. My spouse was at home happy, calculating his newly acquired riches while I was mourning for a man I had hardly known. He said on the phone, "The factory's got to be worth at least $10 million when I arrived home. Could you find it surprising?" I wealth. I felt only disgust as I watched him parade our house, flaunting his inheritance. The man I had in mind for marriage was different. This stranger wore the visage of my husband. Then things started to get bad. "You know, Rita," Jack said one evening with icy eyes, For me, you seem really elderly. I believe I am ready for an update." What I was hearing defied belief. "Excusing me." He shrugged, not even bothered to seem embarrassed. "You picked up what I said. Currently, I am rich. I can improve." Jack's behavior grew ever more irregular over the next 2 weeks. He would stay late, returning early, ravenous for drink and scent. I noted lipstick smears on his collar more than once. Every time I asked him, he would dismiss me. "Mind your own business," he would snidely say. "You should be appreciative. I come home at all." One night, listening to Jack stagger in at 3 in the morning, I knew something had to change. I laid awake. I could not continue to live this way. I owed better. More significantly, though, I needed to know the truth about everything, related to Jack, regarding the inheritance, regarding the life we were supposed to lead. I had enough one morning following another night of Jack stuttering in at daybreak. "Where were you?" I insisted, my voice trembling with hurt and rage. Jack grinned, his bloodshot eyes focusing narrows. "None of your magnificent business, Rita. You should be appreciative. I came back at all." I drew back like if I had been slapped. "Thanks. Is that how you view our marriage?" He fixed me with a calculated glance instead of answering my query. "Say, from your parents' inheritance, just how much remains? We definitely need some savings, right?" The abrupt shift of subject caught me off balance. "What?" "Jack, we have wrung all we have. The narratives are void." His visage turned into a nasty mask of contempt. "Empty. You really must be joking me." He moved about the room, murmuring to himself, his eyes cold. He then turned back to me. "Well, I suppose that is it then. I'm finished here. Done with your help." The front door opened before my reply could start. Tommy entered, his eyes becoming wide to absorb the scene. Jack adjusted his attitude right away. He walked up to our youngster, grinning falsely. "Tommy, my lad, just the guy I intended to see. You could help me to sign something." Pulling a paper from his pocket, he shoved it at Tommy. "You are so abandoning all claim to Uncle Robert's estate. It is only formality. As there is no will, all comes to me anyway." Tommy looked at me, obvious perplexity on his face, but he grabbed the paper and quickly signed it following my nod. Jack grabbed back the document and grinned triumphantly. Then he turned back to me, all pretense gone like though a switch had been switched off. "I want a divorce," he said, his voice flat and frigid. "Rita, I never loved you. I simply tolerated you for the money of your parents. But right now I am rich. I have no need for you anymore." The words strike me as actual blows. Hearing it laid out so starkly was terrible, even if I had suspected. "I'm moving to Uncle Robert's house," Jack said, already dragging a suitcase. "Don't try to get in touch. It ends here." And he disappeared exactly like that. 30 years of marriage stashed in a bag and headed out the door. Frozen, I stood there attempting to sort out what had just happened. It was dreamlike, like a terrible dream I was unable to wake from. "Mom," asked Tommy, spoke softly and with sympathy. "Mom, are you okay?" Turning to my son, my rock, I felt the dam crack. Tommy put his arms around me and tears flowed down my cheeks. Holding me close, he said, "It's okay, Mom. We will make it through this. You are strong. You will be ok." A tiny bit of me marveled at the man his father had become. Kind, caring, everything his father wasn't, as I clutched to his shoulder and sobbed. And I had insight as well. I murmured to Tommy, "You're the best thing he ever did, the only decent thing out of this marriage." Tommy held me closer, and it dawned on me then that I wasn't alone whatever occurred next. I had a son, and together we would tackle whatever came our way. Jack's leaving marked a swirl of agony and incredulity in the next weeks. It was difficult to keep my head high and concentrate on going ahead, particularly when Jack appeared resolved to show off his fresh life in front of me. It began with the Facebook entries. His chronology was inundated with images of Uncle Robert's mansion, now Jack's new house. I tried to ignore it, concentrate on recovery. The pictures suddenly started to shift, though. Blonde, gorgeous, little older than our son, a young woman started showing up in them. Jack had his arm around her, and both of them were smiling at the camera in one picture. The caption made my tummy turn over. Candy, my fiancé, advance whole. The calls began practically right away. Friends, neighbors, even Tommy's former teachers, all of them posing questions I didn't want to answer. Rita, darling, is all good. We looked at Jack's postings. From what is happening? Are Jack and you truly? I could no more stand it. Too much was the humiliation and the continual reminders of Jack's betrayal. I thereby engaged in an activity I never would have considered doing. Following legal advice, I phoned Jack and asked to meet. The day the meeting scheduled came. I waited with divorce papers in hand at our old favorite cafe. Jack swaggered in, Candy on his arm, her face covered in cosmetics. She laughed at something Jack murmured in her ear, not more than 25. Well, Jack said, pulling Candy a chair. If the ball and chain isn't the vintage one. Candy, honey, meet Rita, the first wife. Candy cast a pitying glance that set my blood boiling, but I stayed cool. Sliding the divorce papers over the table, I said, I have the ones here. I only ask for the house. Nothing else is asked for. You can hold on to everything else. He grabbed the pen without debate, which surprised me. Fine, have a small house. These days I have larger and better things. He wrote his signature all over the paperwork. Then he turned to Candy, his voice sickeningly lovely. I can now be at last with someone I really adore, someone deserving of mine. I gathered the papers and left the cafe, my hands trembling just a little. Behind me I heard Jack mocking, laughing, but I turned away. I arrived with what I meant to. I went for divorce the following day. I felt a weight drop off my shoulders as I turned over the documents to the court clerk. I thought I may breathe once more for the first time in months. When you least expect it, life seems to present justice. For me, it presented a story plastered across the local newspaper. Local business tycoon empire crumbles. Nephew left with massive debt. It turned out that in an attempt to grow the company, Uncle Robert had borrowed a large sum right before his death. During our hospital visit, he had mentioned something about a new project. Tommy and I hadn't thought through the ramifications at the time. All of it now made sense. From a distance, I watched Jack's newly collapsed life fall around him. He sold the estate, the factory, the vehicles, all. Still, he was left about $1 million short. The cherry on top here is Candy, his young bride, packed her bags and departed the instant she knew Jack wasn't the rich catch she had assumed. If I claimed not to feel a twingle of gratification, I would be lying. Karma apparently had caught up with Jack at last. Then one evening in rain, someone knocked at my door. When I opened it, Jack was standing there looking nothing like the haughty, rich man who had walked out on me months before. He looked red-rimmed and desperate. He was messy. Rita, he answered, his voice breaking. I've been quite a moron. I can see that right now. Could we perhaps talk? Please. Against better sense, I allowed him inside. I listened as Jack let his heart come out for the next hour. He shared with me his loss of everything and his realization of what really counts in life. With eyes begging, I was wrong, Rita, he said. So wrong. But now I know that you were the only one who ever really looked out for me, only one I've ever truly loved. Then Jack descended on one knee, creating a tiny velvet box, to my total incredulity. Rita, do grant me still another chance. Marry me once more. Together, we can conquer everything. I was mute for a brief instant. I chuckled then, something unexpected even for me. It began as a little chuckle and developed into full-bodied, tears streaming down my face, laughing. Jack's expression dropped. What's so funny? When I could at last breathe, I stared him squarely in the eye. Oh, Jack, you truly believed it would be that simple? You could treat me like trash, toss me away, and then come crawling back when things got tough? His look clouded. Now listen here, he said, snarling and leaping to his feet. This is also my house. I am entitled. I gently went to the drawer containing our divorce records, took them out, and showed him his own signature. No, Jack, you don't. You signed away any entitlement to this house. Right now, Maya's get out. I'll contact the police. I thought he may try to argue more for a time, but something in my demeanor must have let him know I intended business. He turned and surged out without another word, slamming the door behind him. I phoned Tommy and told him everything as soon as he left. As always, my brilliant kid was encouraging. You did the right thing, Mom, he advised. I'm happy of you. More to me than he could ever know those words meant. I made some major decisions in the next weeks. With all its memories, both positive and negative, the house seemed overly large for just me. I sold it then, using the proceeds to purchase a nice apartment in a lively area I'd always enjoyed. At 60, I discovered that life is only starting. I have begun to travel, seeing all Jack always promised we would visit, but never did. I have painted, started a book group, and even tried salsa dancing. Every now and again, I catch Jack here in town. Now depressed by his blunders and setbacks, he seems older. Though life did not go as planned, you know what? There is no other way I would have it. I am really, totally, joyfully me now for the first time in a very long time.